You're listening to the Platform Launchers podcast. I'm John Stange, and it's great to have you with us again this week for our first podcast episode of this new year. And we're really excited to kick off a new year. In fact, live on the call here with me right now, I have our members club, and we just spent an extensive amount of time together looking at a variety of details about some of the things that were our big wins for this past year and thinking about some of our goals for this coming year. And so it was really exciting to go around the group and hear about some of those things. And I think a lot of us are really trying to stretch ourselves to try new things in this coming year. And one of the things that I think is helpful for us, if you're in the process of building a platform or developing online content that you're sharing with other people, I think it's helpful to really start thinking about the fact that you don't need to wait around for someone to give you permission to be helpful. And that's our theme this week. We're going to be talking about, or maybe just asking the question, are you waiting for permission to be helpful? Are you waiting for permission to be helpful? Now, earlier today, I received a text, and it was from a friend who was attempting to get a podcast started. And his text began with a very simple question that was about editing software. So if you're going to be recording a podcast, you're going to need to record it somewhere. You're going to need to edit it somewhere. And then he asked me about that. Then he asked some follow-up questions about some more nuanced information about getting a podcast going. And instead of replying to the text thread, I did the old guy thing. I didn't know this was an old guy thing until recently, but apparently it's an old guy thing. But I did the old guy thing and I gave him a call. Could you imagine? I called him on the phone. I've noticed that for some people, that is a terrifying thing if somebody actually goes from text to phone call. But I'm just on the cusp of being old enough to know that that's got some value. And I even joked with him that it was his fault because he asked for too many details via text. And if you ask for too many details via text, I just skip the texting and I call. So that's what I did. I called him. And what followed was a 12-minute conversation about various elements related to podcasting. And he started asking me questions, like I said, about software, but then he transitioned to asking me questions about microphone preferences. And so I shared some of my microphone preferences with him, told him what I like to use. And after I shared my preferences, then we talked about the benefits of batch recording, and we talked about building momentum for a podcast. And we talked about the process of gaining consistency with content creation and a few other relevant topics that all podcasters wonder about when they're creating a show for the first time. But we talked about all these things. And then at the very end of the call, he said, "Thanks for taking the time to answer my questions. Don't be surprised if you hear from me again once we get the show off the ground." And I told him I'd be happy, more than happy, to chat about these things yet again in the future. But the friend that texted me, I'll just give you a little bit of background here. This is somebody I've known for a long time, but not someone who contacts me regularly. I would say at most we probably connect once a year, maybe once every year and a half. It's regular enough, but it's not constant. But when it came to podcasting, I was the first person that came to his mind. When he had questions about podcasting, the very first person that came to his mind was me. Why do you suppose that is? Why do you suppose he thought of me when it came to podcasting? Do I have some sort of official designation, or do I have some sort of credential that makes me the authority on podcasting? Obviously, I don't. But among the people my friend knows, I'm the one person who has been consistently recording podcasts for the longest period of time. So when he thought about someone to ask this question to, or his series of questions to, he thought about me. So again, while I haven't been officially designated or credentialed as a podcasting authority, that's exactly what I've become to him. And I don't need a credential to establish that. Basically, my years of work and the podcasting success that have come from that, that's the only real credential that I needed. I don't need a podcasting diploma. I don't need a badge. I don't need a title. All I really need, I was thinking about this. I was like, what do you really need in a moment like that? All you really need is God's blessing, the fruit of your labor, and a servant's heart. And if you have those three things, I think that can really contribute to you becoming an authority in a particular subject area or area, I should say. And I mention that because I have met many people, particularly those who are early in the process of developing their online platforms, who mistakenly believe that they need some sort of a credential or designation or diploma before they can help someone else. And I have to say that is quite far from being true. You do not need those things to be able to help people. Now, I recognize that there are forms of outside validation that might be useful to convince you that you have what it takes to be helpful. I recognize that that's useful, but that validation can sometimes take a long time before it's ever bestowed. And in the meantime, I look at it this way. Are you just supposed to wait around for permission to be helpful while you wait for that validation, or while you wait for that designation to come to you? Or do you think you could begin helping someone maybe even as soon as today? Well, I would suggest that today would be a great day for you to begin helping somebody else. If the content you produce doesn't require licensing, and I recognize some content does require licensing, so you do need that outside validation for that. And there are some forms of content that you do need legal credentialing to share with others. I'm thinking about certain medical forms of information and certain financial things. I do understand that there are certain topics that fall into you must be credentialed before you can be helpful with some of those things. I get that. But if the content you're creating doesn't require licensing and doesn't require some sort of legal credentialing to be able to share it with others, I would say then if it doesn't require that, the only thing that's probably holding you back from sharing it is your own self-doubt. So maybe you're struggling to see yourself as someone who can help other people. Maybe you're struggling to see yourself as someone that others would even listen to. Well, I could tell you there are a few things that you can do to get over those self-imposed emotional limits. And I will stress that these are self-imposed limits. These are the type of things that sometimes we impose upon ourselves unfairly. And if you've been unfairly or maybe even unwisely imposing some of those things upon yourself, I'd like to encourage you to switch your thinking on this. And I want to suggest a few things that can help you get over some of those self-imposed emotional limits. And number one on my list is this: just start helping people. The more people you help, and the more help you offer to them, the more comfortable you'll become with offering help in general. And I think you'll also begin to notice that there are common struggles and frequently asked questions that are regularly brought up in your area of expertise. And if you're asked a question and you don't know the answer, just admit it, but then follow up with some research on the subject so you're better prepared the next time you receive a similar question. But I would say one of the big things that can help you overcome some of those self-imposed limits is just start helping people. Don't wait around for permission. Don't wait around for validation. Just start. And the more you help, the more comfortable you'll become with helping. Number two on my list is this: give yourself permission to succeed. Now, in most areas, success takes time. Seasoned content creators will tell you that in most cases, it took them a few years of consistent action before their platform really hit a tipping point. Your platform will continue to grow if you're consistent, but growth eventually, one of the fun parts about growth is that consistent growth eventually starts to become something that leads toward a tipping point where growth becomes exponential. So I would say on average, I think for most things, if you're building something from scratch, I think most people would say it probably took them about 3 years of unwavering consistency before they saw the results that they initially dreamed of. But even before they got to that tipping point, even before they started seeing some of the dream come true, they'll see a whole series of valuable small successes along the way that start building on one another, leading to that tipping point. Give yourself permission to get to the tipping point. Give yourself permission to experience those incremental successes all along the way. The first person you're helping, the first time you get paid for helping, the first time you experience this metric or this number in your downloads or your listens, or your audience grows to a certain number, whatever metric you're using, give yourself permission to gradually succeed and get to that tipping point. If you're doing something that you love, the time will most likely go by quickly. And the cool part about it is your knowledge base is going to steadily grow as you consistently do the things you're doing that give yourself permission to succeed and march toward that tipping point. All right, number 3 is this. Don't downplay the value that you bring to the table. And the reason I'm saying that is this, because when someone reaches out to you for help, you don't need to feign modesty and you don't need to act like you're unqualified to assist them when you know you're qualified to assist. If you're good at something, or if you have a deeper level of knowledge on a particular subject, share it without deflecting. Don't say things like, well, I haven't really been doing this as long as so-and-so, and so, maybe you shouldn't ask me, or don't say something like, who could give a much better answer? This guy, he could give a much better answer than I can. Don't do that. Don't downplay the value that you bring to the table. Understand and acknowledge the value you bring to the table, and then bring the value. All right, number 4 on this list of things that I think can really help you get over the self-imposed emotional limits that sometimes we think we seem to have when it comes to attempting to help people. Number 4 on my list is this: get prepared to give away lots of free content. Give away lots of free content. This is actually something a lot of people surprisingly forget to do. And I don't know why we forget to do this, but I think part of the reason why we forget to do this is I think a lot of people think that for their platform to be successful, that all their best content needs to be behind a paywall. And if their best content is behind a paywall, then their business or their platform will finally become profitable. And that's absolutely not the case. I would guess, and I haven't, really sat down to figure this out precisely, but I bet you I'm pretty close with this guess. But I would guess that less than 10% of the content that I've created is behind a paywall. I don't even think it's 10%. I create a lot of content, and I think less than 10% of it is behind a paywall. The majority of content that I create on a daily or weekly basis is freely shared through various channels. And the cool thing is, each of those channels that I'm freely sharing content on, each of them becomes a marketing arm for my overall platform. And the more I help people with free content, the more income I seem to receive from my paid offers, which is kind of ironic. You would think that giving out free content wouldn't result in income growing, but the more I help people with free content, truthfully, the more income I start to receive from some of my paid offers. And here's another irony with giving away free content. Giving away free content helps me build an audience, it helps me build authority, and it helps me build advertising revenue. Because my advertising revenue that I generate, it's all being generated not on my paid content, but on my free content. And some months that advertising revenue is higher than some of the other sources of income that are behind the paywall. Free content can become one of the most valuable things you produce. And again, most of the time, you don't need anyone's permission to share it. You just have to purpose in your heart to be helpful and start helping people with that free content. One final piece of advice that I'll give you related to this. If you've really been struggling with this idea of, do I have permission to be helpful? I would encourage you to start referring to yourself differently. Now, what do I mean by that? People will think of you in accordance with how you carry yourself. If you know a lot about something, but you speak of yourself as a novice, people will assume that your self-assessment is correct. And they will think of you as a novice as well, even though that is not the honest truth. So I'm a big fan of honesty. I don't think it's wise. I don't think it's healthy to be dishonest. And I also don't think that dishonesty demonstrates humility. Sometimes people think that being a little dishonest is a way to be humble. And I don't think that's the case at all, because if you look at what humility really means, humility involves taking an honest assessment of who you are and what you do. So that means if you are indeed an experienced writer, don't hesitate to call yourself one. That's what you've become. You've become an experienced writer. It's okay to refer to yourself that way. Or if you're an experienced coach, call yourself a coach. Tell people you coach. Tell people that that's what you do. Let them know. If you start a membership community, we have several members in our members club here that are starting membership communities of their own. It's very exciting. It's one of the major goals that some of the members in our group are really focusing on for this coming year. If you start a membership community, give yourself a title. Call yourself either the leader of that membership community or the founder. I typically refer to myself as the founder of Platform Launchers. And don't hesitate to call yourself that. If you take the risk to start something, that's indeed who you are. If you found a membership community, you are a founder, right? If you start one, you're a founder. So you're good at something that can help others succeed. So start describing yourself in honest terms. Let me say this as I finish up here. Creating a successful online platform, it really comes down to figuring out how you can be helpful to other people. Your platform and the content you produce, it solves problems. The things you write, the things you record, the things that you teach, it helps make the lives of other people better. So keep serving others with a generous spirit. Don't wait your entire life for someone else to give you permission to help the people that you're qualified and positioned to help. You don't need permission to be helpful. Your experience and the wisdom you've gained from that experience has already credentialed you. Life is too short, and time is too limited to waste it waiting for some elusive form of exterior validation to tell us that we have the permission to do what we've clearly been designed to do from long ago. Don't wait for permission to be helpful. Be helpful. Give yourself that permission to be helpful with the platform that you build and the content you share, because I think you're going to be able to look at it and one day say, I'm glad I took the risk, because you're going to have a whole series of stories of people that you've helped along the way. And I think that's going to motivate you to create even more helpful content. Before we finish up this week, I just want to invite you, like I do almost every week, to stop over at platformlaunchers.com, and you can check out some of the content we have over there. We have a very robust blog. You can check out the back episodes of our podcast if you're listening to us online somewhere. And you could also check out our podcast from whatever favorite podcast player you like to utilize. We're certainly happy to invite you over there. But one of the most fun things that we have the opportunity to do as a group is gather together and really just invest in one another's platforms through information and encouragement and accountability and all of the things that go along with that inside our members club. And if you're interested in being part of our members club, stop by platformlaunchers.com and you can see an easy way to take a 2-week test drive of our members club. We'd love to invite you on the calls with us. We'd love to get you plugged into the community. You could see if it would be right for you. We would love to help you get your online platform off the ground and help you share the message that you feel most passionate about, and hopefully increase your income in the process as you seek to be a blessing to your family. So again, head over to the website, jump on board, take the 2-week test drive, and give us a chance to actually meet you in person. But that's it for us this week. Thank you so much again for joining us. We hope your new year is off to an awesome start, and we look forward to catching you again right here next time. Take care.